Is vinyl the superior format for listening to music? In 2022, vinyl outsold compact discs for the first time since 1987. 41 million units of vinyl were sold versus 33 million compact discs. Now, there's a lot of different factors driving this vinyl revival, if you will. But I wanted to break it down just a little bit and actually explore which of these formats do we think is the best format. I think we could rewind all the way back to 2008. That was the creation of a record store day. And Record Store Day was created to celebrate and spotlight independent record stores. And on this day each year, these independent stores who are a part of the group get these special releases of both CDs and vinyl, specialized artwork, really cool physical pieces of media and product. And it could be said that that was sort of the start of this vinyl revival. Now, me personally, I was purchasing compact discs all the way up through about 2015. That would have been about the year that I just cold stopped purchasing CDs for a while. I had been buying vinyl here and there when it was available. I didn't really start heavily buying vinyl again until about 2019. In 2015, I stopped purchasing physical media for a period of about 5 or 6 years, and I was purchasing all of my stuff online. I wasn't a member of any streaming platform. I simply went to Apple Music and would purchase the digital copies of the album because it was convenient. And let's be honest, that's the convenient factor is what sort of drove the industry towards the digital marketplace. As more and more vinyl became available, about 2018, 2019, I started getting back into it, and I started buying albums here and there, especially the really cool ones that I would see that I wanted to have to collect and to actually ingest and see the beautiful artwork, all the stuff that I had been missing in those 4 to 5 years of not buying CDs. 2020 happens, and we all know we're sick of talking about 2020, I understand. But the pandemic really got people thinking, and sort of we were all stuck in our houses. And more of the market started to go for this collectability of vinyl. And that's really when it starts to take off. I remember 2020 vividly not being able to find a lot of vinyls that I was wanting, releases that were coming out. And at the time I was thinking, what is going on? More and more students and young adults that I knew didn't listen to the vinyl were buying the vinyl. Barnes & Noble was the first retailer I can really remember that started carrying a large vinyl collection aside from the independent record stores. And there'd be lots of people in there, and they would be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it, I love it. And it would be young people. I mean, we're talking people in their 20s. And they would be buying the vinyl, and you would hear them telling their friends, yeah, I don't have a record player, I just want the vinyl, because they wanted to have that physical connection, that physical piece of music. I think for a lot of people my age, it comes down to nostalgia, that feeling that it sort of takes you back to the 80s and the 90s. For a lot of people, it's the collectability, and that has certainly been the case with fans like Taylor Swift fans, where they've wanted to purchase anything and everything they can get their hands on that the artist is putting out, because they want to have it at their house and they want to collect it. And a lot of artists, they're doing these just absolutely beautiful vinyls with booklets and all sorts of extras as a part of the package. And that's certainly part of what's driving the vinyl craze. Obviously, for many people, it is a pleasing experience to drop that vinyl on the turntable, set down the needle and the tone arm, and just sit there captivated, listening to the music, looking at the artwork. It's an experience. But getting back to my initial question at the beginning of the episode, is vinyl the superior form of listening to music? And I'm gonna have to say no. And not only because it's inconvenient, and by the way, vinyl is absolutely inconvenient, but also the fact that they just don't sound quite as big as digital files do. And people are gonna get angry at me for saying it, but it's true. The dynamic range of vinyl is going to be around 70 decibels. That means how loud the record can be before it starts to distort. The vinyl records can't be as loud, and honestly, if they start to get too soft, you start to hear a lot of the noise of the needle scratching the grooves. You can hear the pops and the crackles. So vinyl has a much shallower dynamic range. However, a CD is going to have a much larger dynamic range, around 96 decibels. So the bass, especially, you can notice it. I notice it on the bass and the low end. The record doesn't sound as full in the low end as the CD does. Another thing people don't think about when it comes to vinyl versus CDs is the fact that I mentioned earlier. Vinyl, you have to take really good care of it, and over time, the vinyl grooves are going to wear as the needle wears through them, and it's going to deteriorate the quality of the vinyl. Now, obviously, you can take care of it, real good care of it. You can clean it, and you can prolong the life of vinyl. We all know that our grandparents and our parents have vinyl from the 60s. It still exists and still plays fine. But is the dynamic range, does that record play as good as it did back in the 60s? Possibly not. However, a compact disc uses light on the bottom of that CD, and so nothing ever touches it. So if you take really, really good care of a compact disc, theoretically, you're going to have that CD for many, many years. Now, some of my friends on here will probably say, Mark, the record sounds warmer because it's an analog medium, recorded analog, all analog, and so it sounds better because digital uses a compression process, and everything's compressed when it's put into that digital file and format. And if you're talking about music from back in the 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, yes, it was an all analog path. And they would literally record all of those tracks to beautiful tape, and then they would mix it down, and they would play the tape machines and actually cut the music on the lathe and press the record, and it was all analog. Today's music, like Death Cab for Cutie here, this record was recorded digitally, and then it was processed and pressed into this record. It was an original digital file that's just been pressed onto an analog format. These CDs and all of these digital formats were recorded even at 44.1 sample rate. I can't hear the compression. Honestly, when I'm listening to it, I just hear the bigger dynamic range, and I still think that the CD sounds a little bit fuller. That's me. My ears aren't made of gold, and I'm sure if you have a $100,000 stereo system with the absolute most fantastic turntable, everything just solid gold, ready to go, you might be able to put a piece of vinyl on and say, this thing sounds incredible. Maybe it sounds better than a CD. But I'd be willing to bet that it doesn't, because the CD format sounds fantastic. And for that matter, most digital formats on the phones sound fantastic these days as well. I'm around music all day long. I love it. I still use MP3 formats left and right. Even in my own productions, I use MP3 formats for a lot of different things. I'm just going to say it. I don't hear much difference. I think they sound great. MP3 file formats sound great on a really good system as long as the piece of music and the production was done well and mixed well. Sounds fantastic. Vinyls today sound amazing. It's the experience. It's the sitting down, being captive to that stereo and listening to that music. Not washing the dishes while you're doing it, cleaning the house while you're doing it, doing your homework while you're listening to the music. The moment of sitting down and ingesting that piece of music in front of a stereo, that's the magic. That's what people love. The idea of that is what they love. And you can do that with a CD player. You can do that with a piece of vinyl. It ultimately doesn't matter. Buy the format that makes you happy. In my case, I typically buy both. If it's an artist I really love and I really want to support them, I'll buy the CD and I'll buy the vinyl. I will say this, if you're going to get into the vinyl collecting and the hobby of playing vinyls and purchasing vinyls, do not buy a cheap turntable. It's counterproductive. These little all-in-one system, these Crosley's systems, they sound terrible. The speakers on them sound terrible. And I'll say this, the tone arm and the needle can actually damage your records. The tone arm isn't balanced and it'll do a lot of skipping. You notice that a lot of these cheaper ones, you'll probably notice the tone arm ends up skipping a lot. It's not balanced good, and every time it's skipping and bouncing that needle back down on the record in the grooves, it's damaging the record. So stay away from those cheap turntables. I personally use a Tech TN300 turntable. It's about a $400 table. I use Cambridge Audio receivers, and I use a Cambridge Audio CD player. The CD player was a couple of $100. The receiver cost me a few $100. Nothing terribly fancy. My speakers were $100. You can put together a system that's not just priced out of this world, that will serve you well for many years. So don't cheap out on the turntable so that your records will be protected. Aside from that, buy CDs, buy records, support your independent music stores. We have one right here in South Haven where I live, Discotheque, and I go in there and buy CDs for $4. They have great record collections in there to shop as well. The process of just going through the music. I cannot stress enough the difference between trying to scroll through an index on my phone. That doesn't bring me joy. But just sitting down at night and looking through my collection of records and visually seeing, I haven't listened to this artist in a long time. There's nothing like it. It's absolutely magical. That's the magic of owning vinyl right there, is sitting down on a Friday night, going through the vinyls in your collection and pulling out something because you visually see it and you're like, I haven't heard that in a long time. That's it.